Linda, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for agreeing. It's lovely to have you. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed for our Sylvan Healing Sanctuary podcast. Very good to have you here. Can't wait to find out all about what you're doing. If you could please start just by giving us a little introduction of yourself, who you are, where you're based, what you do.
Okay, so my name is Linda Bishopp. I live in Ashford in Kent and will in the not too distant future be moving closer to Folkestone to be by the sea, which I'm very excited about. What I do for a living is I'm a psychotherapist and counsellor. I'm also an intuitive coach, a spiritual healer and a Reiki master. So I offer those. I work from my home and have a busy practice offering those therapies. I tend to specialize in working with trauma, and I have found that combination of therapies is great for working with all different aspects of trauma. So that's what I do.
Excellent. So that's kind of like your toolbox of techniques that help people in different situations.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about your background or your history that's led you to doing what you do today, how you came to become a healer. Particularly, we're interested in the energy healing aspect of your work here, or anything from your past that will help us understand who you are today.
Okay. How long we got? So I did not have a happy childhood. There were lots of difficulties, details I won't particularly go into, but I was not happy and didn't have much support from the people, my family and the people around me. But I always had support from somebody called Uncle Norman, who I subsequently discovered was a spirit, somebody in spirit. And he was around a lot and was a massive support to me and somebody to talk to and comfort me at times when things were difficult. And I thought everybody had an Uncle Norman when I was little, and didn't realise fully, I don't think, until I was in my teens, that this chap, it was not quite normal to have this chap around. My father was quite dismissive of anything of that nature, so I kept Uncle Norman a secret. He didn't know, but I thought all kids had one until I was older, then realised that I had something going on here. So that's what probably started my interest in things at the edge of understanding, shall we say, that I investigated further in my adulthood. So I've been a spiritual healer for coming up 40 years now, and the other therapies have come along later. So I was a healer first.
That's really interesting. You know what come to my mind when you was talking about Uncle Norman and how you thought everybody had an Uncle Norman, is stories I've heard about children who, and it is quite often off the back of children who have got difficulties at home or don't have a lot of support or don't have brothers and sisters or don't have a lot of friends or whatever reason, who often will have what adults term an imaginary friend. And I wonder, the more I learn about these sorts of things, the more I wonder whether these imaginary friends actually are imaginary at all.
I think there's a lot in that. Yeah, absolutely. I think kids are closer to the non-physical existence because they haven't been on this plane so very long. And somewhere inside them, they remember it more than we do. So a lot of them come in with that understanding innately, I think, even if they couldn't explain it to anybody else. And then kids, as they grow up, tend to forget that connection more. But I've always thought imaginary friends was probably a spirit guide of some sort.
Yeah. I do remember a story that my mother has told me about where we lived when I was, well, I had a cot at the time, so I must have been only about 18 months old or something. And but I could talk, so I was very young but still in a cot. And I used to say in, you know, toddler language that there was a man with a funny hat that lived behind the wardrobe. And my mum used to say that she'd come in the room and I'd be chattering away to the man in the funny hat, and it used to frighten her.
Yeah.
And we had a lady that lived over the road from us at the time, and she was a spiritualist medium. And my mum went over and had a chat with her and said, look, you know, can you just come over and find out what this is, because
Yeah.
I'm scared. And she came over and she said, oh no, this is a really mischievous Christmas spirit who just adores your daughter and is having a laugh with her and is completely harmless. But if it's frightening you and you still don't want this spirit communicating with your daughter, then you can just ask it nicely to go away. And because he's a nice soul, it probably just will. And so she did, and he did, apparently.
Did you miss him?
I can't remember. I don't remember the man in the funny hat at all. I imagine I probably did miss him because I wouldn't have known any different at the time that what,
Yeah.
you know, why this person couldn't be around talking to me and other people could.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but a Christmas spirit. And before my mum asked him to leave, she did actually have an incident with him where she jokingly said to my grandmother, if you don't stop whatever it is you're doing, I can't remember what it was, they were having a joke fight with each other. If you don't stop that, I'll tell my Christmas spirit to pull all your Christmas decorations down. The next morning they were all on the floor.
Oh, really? Oh, how funny.
And that was the bit that freaked my mum out. And that's when she went and said, all right, I can't handle this, you've got to go.
Yeah, I can understand that. Shame, but you know,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that as we all develop as a species, we're all going to become more and more able to connect with spirit in that way, and it will become a normal thing.
I think there's certainly a big kind of movement just lately I've noticed with people becoming more open-minded and more aware of things and more willing to try stuff that only 10-15 years ago they wouldn't have touched.
Absolutely, massive change going on at the moment, and the pandemic has speeded that up. Actually, I think more people have had contemplative time, more people have been frightened and therefore connecting to something bigger than themselves. More people asking questions about what's going on this planet, and it's opening people up. I think that's what's happening. I think it's all part of the plan.
Good. Be good.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about the values and principles that you have that underpin your approach to healing and well-being in general?
Yes. So I suppose something that's really, really important to me personally is truthfulness, being as honest as it's possible to be in this world. And that comes to me personally because of my weird and screwed up childhood, and the fact that I discovered in my 20s that I was not as truthful as I could be because I had to learn to lie to survive as a child. And it was actually when I was learning handwriting analysis that I discovered the capacity to lie was in my handwriting, and I hated it and vowed to remove it, and I have. So working as a therapist, therefore, is underpinned by that value. It's really important to me that I have as much integrity as I'm capable of having, and I'm transparent about who I am and why I do what I do as a therapist. I can't see a therapist working in any other way, frankly, because the keystone of any kind of therapy is trust. And you'll build that with somebody by being able to be transparent and truthful about how you work and why you work that way. I think that then if you have trust, then people can relax into their healing process with whatever therapy you're offering. It's really important to me that people feel they can trust me.
And when it comes to the energy healing aspect, I know that the same principles and you know the same ethics that you have will apply. But is there anything that's different about that? I think the way I'm thinking of it is more from the point of view of the receiver of it and their honesty and integrity. Does it affect how they receive what you're able to give?
What, am I being honest, you mean?
Well, I think theirs.
Or whether they're able to be honest. Does
Mm.
it affect how they receive healing? Probably not. So when I work as a healer, I believe that, well, I know that our unconscious mind, our body is part of our unconscious mind. So when I'm connecting with somebody's body as a healer, when I put my hands on their body, I'm connecting with their unconscious mind, not their conscious. It would be the conscious mind that lies for defensive reasons, for whatever.
Mm.
So that there's a pure thing about healing in that you directly connect with somebody's soul, and that won't lie.
I love
So
that.
when you have done that, and the unconscious mind gives me whatever I need to know about that person through the body, then we're working in the purest way possible. So I will discover things that way that they give to me unconsciously to work with. And I talk to my clients during healing, because I will tell them what I'm feeling and what I'm finding, and are they feeling and what are they finding. So we work together, and that allows that to emerge and become open in the room. So I find that healing very often, if somebody is coming to me for psychotherapy and healing is part of the treatment that I offer, which is often the case, it deepens our relationship with them having healing, because we have connected in a way that's not possible to do just mind to mind. It's this physical connection, it's different. So I think in that way, then if the healing is successful and that my client is open to it, there is a greater level of honesty from them moving forward from that as well.
I'm interested in because every healer I've spoken to has like a different personal experience of healing when they give it. But there are some similarities as well. So for you, what's your process or experience, or how does it feel when you do it? Do you only do hands-on or hands-off? Tell me more about your style.
So I have my client on a couch, they're laying on their back, covered in a blanket. I normally start working from the head. So I have a stool at the head, I will sit and just start by connecting with somebody's shoulders by putting my hands. I ask the management, okay, going to do, so we're taught all kinds of ceremonies. I was as a spiritual healer, I was as a Reiki master, taught different ways to do this. And
So just to interject, so sorry, but for people who don't understand, who's the management?
The management is them upstairs. So it's my spirit guide, it's God, it's the universe, universal energy, whatever your phrase is to that, I tend to call them the management.
Right.
They're not really my managers, but you know, it's a good phrase, and it kind of brings it down in an earthy way without getting too floaty away on a cloud kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I tune in to my guides, my management, ask them to come in. I work with a bunch called the Six. They don't, I see them as columns of light. If I see them at all, don't always see them. And they're the guys who work with me. So when I sit down to do the healing, gonna do healing now, guys, let's get ready, and off we go. And that's all I need to do now. I've been doing this for 40 years. So my guides know what I'm about to do and when I'm about to do it. They know when they need to come in. They do it. I don't do it. They do the healing. So that's what happens. And what I find these days is I don't feel energy flowing through me anymore. I used to, but I don't now. I get information from my client's body. So I believe that's my guides telling me. go here, go there, stick your hands here, you know, lift off there, she can't take that, we're going to go over it. That's kind of what's going on in my head, and I will get information or I get pictures coming into my head while I'm working. So sometimes I get words, or put your hands there. Sometimes in my hands I get really hot energy or really cold, or sometimes I don't feel anything at all. And I just let that, all of that be. It's almost not my business. You know, I'm the conduit or the jump leads for this energy to come down to my client. However, because on the team there are people coming at this from different perspectives. So there's a doctor and there's a homeopath and there's a healer and blah blah blah. They talk to me and they say, you know, put your hands here, or I will speak to the clients. I've already kind of pre-warned them that I might well talk to them during the session.
The client or the spirit?
Client. I will talk to the client, because so to me, healing is not something I'm precious or secretive about. I call myself a healer because I don't know what else to call it, but it's really the client who's doing the healing. They are the healer because they receive the energy that I can conduct to them, and they're the ones who heal themselves using that boost of energy. When they're healthy, they can conduct that energy to themselves perfectly fine. So I'm giving them a boost, an inoculation, if you like, and we work with that. So I might then pick up, oh, there's something here that feels a bit claggy or a bit blocked, or something's giving me a buzz here, or I don't know, I get some weird sensations or colours or something sometimes, and I'll say to the client, have you had anything happen in this part of your body? Or I'll get a word I was working with somebody not long ago and she had lost a baby, and I just knew as soon as I put my hands on that part of her body, and there was grief there. So I brought it in very softly, that I picked up a loss, and she just cried straight away. So I knew what we. So, but the tears enabled her to release some of that, and then we had a little chat about that. And that was part of the process, that released that. Sometimes I get something which I don't know what it is. Oh, there's something here like a potato. What's this? And we'll talk about this blocky thing that's there in her body somewhere, and do some exercises together to start to breathe it out. You know, are you ready to let go of this now? Do you, you know, do you need to know what it is or not? And we just work together on it. So then I will finish off a session by just stroking through the aura to clear out any residue of what we've worked with, and grounding it for them. I've already got them grounding. So the initial exercise is them breathing through and putting roots down. So they're grounded through the session. So the flow of energy is going through them all the time, and anything that they're letting go of just goes to ground. But I just finish that off at the end of the session. Then usually after they've sat up and had a glass of water, we'll have a little chat about what they were feeling during the session, whether they felt it was useful or not, or whatever they feel they need to say. So that's what I do.
That's brilliant. I love that description. I particularly liked that you're connecting with somebody's soul directly. I love that. And that it feels more like, when you was describing it, it was feeling more like it's teamwork. And I like that.
Yeah.
That feeling, that process. So, brilliant.
Yeah, because, you know, the purpose of being here is being autonomous. And the healing is about coming to understand your autonomy and being able to stand on your own 2 feet and live a purposeful life. So how is me treating them and not telling them what I'm doing going to help that? Doesn't.
No.
So that's why I work like, it's one of the reasons I work like that.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense to me. Are there any, actually, I'm going to start with a different question there. Can you tell me about your first experience of receiving energy healing?
Mm.
Because it wasn't long ago.
I'm just trying to retrieve the memory. Oh, wowzers. The first, I can't remember the first time.
Was there a time where you've received healing that it stands out for you at all?
Yes. Yeah, I'll give you that one. That
Okay.
was probably after I'd been going. I went for healing regularly every week for about 2 years, maybe longer, before I started to train as a healer. And because, I mean, I can describe this now, I couldn't have given you these words then, but because I'd had so much trauma in my early life, I was completely dissociated. And what that means is that I was not fully present in my body. Life had been too scary, and I tried. That's what I believe that was. And I was not therefore fully in my body, and I was not grounding my energy. So, any sign of any trouble, and I would whip off and become vague and disconnect. So I must have been having healing for about 18 months. And I was sitting in the healing chair one day and I grounded my energy for the first time. And it was, oh God, it was weird, because I don't recall ever having felt being fully in my body before. I felt a bit discombobulated and heavy, and I tried to get up out of the chair and I couldn't, because I was so heavy. I couldn't work out how to lift my body.
Right.
So I had to physically move my legs with my hands. I couldn't just move my legs and get up out of it. I had to lift my leg up with my hand to get it to move around the chair to lift myself up. And my legs didn't want to walk for the rest of the day.
Wow.
Now, as the days went by, that effect became less and less, even though I was still grounding as I got used to it. But that first time was quite a shock. That was an absolute proof that A, healing works, and B, I was definitely committing to be here fully. And was that a good idea? Oh, damn. But obviously, I worked on that. And I still go out now. So dissociation is still a defense mechanism of mine, but I know, and I bring myself back in again now. But that first experience was like having lead legs.
Wow. I bet that did it frighten you a little bit.
It was weird.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, the two healers who'd been working on me were telling me what they thought was going on, comforting me. They didn't just leave me there with lead legs and walk off. So they were saying it's fine, so they'd obviously experienced it before. So there you go. But it felt pretty strange to me at the time.
Yeah. And what was the most memorable time when you've given healing?
Yeah, that was probably about 25 years ago, actually. I had a lady come to me who had been diagnosed with cancer in and around her tummy area, belly. She was very scared. She was quite young as well, actually. She was only in her 30s. So she was really frightened, and she was sort of going through all the checks, and going to be going back in for treatment in the next week, I think. So she came for some healing. And I hadn't seen her before. So I did my usual and sat at her head and laid hands on like I do. And the management came in and said, right, get out of the way, Linda. I need to do some serious work here. So I disconnected from her and went and stood about 10 foot away from her, back up against the wall, actually, and watched proceedings. And the 6 columns of light came in around her, and they lifted up her energy bodies up to about a foot above the couch. So I could see her physical body laying on the couch, but I could see her energy body about a yard above that, and they were working on that. They just surrounded that in light. I stood there in awe. I was completely gobsmacked watching this, because I don't always see this stuff this clearly. Yeah, I know they're around, but I don't necessarily see them. But this day I could see them. I could see them holding her. And it's like this energy, light energy all around her. And that went on 15 minutes, I guess.
Wow, that's a long time if you're just laying there.
Well, if you're having healing, it's normally a 50-minute session. But this is what they did. So I watched this, and then slowly they let that go back down and surround her physical body again and pulled back. So I then came up to her and did my usual thing about finishing off the session and brought her around slowly. It took her quite a while to come back. She'd gone, drifted off a long way into a really deep meditative state. Anyway, when she came to, and I'd got her on the edge, sitting on the edge of the couch, and she's having a glass of water, and I'd asked her what she had experienced, and she described exactly what I had seen. She had felt like she was floating above the couch, and she could feel all the light, and she just said it just felt wonderful. So that was massive for me, that I'd seen that and she'd felt the same experience. Then she came back to me about a week and a half later and said she'd been back to the doctors and they had been utterly mystified. Her consultant couldn't understand it because he said, you've gone into remission and we don't understand why. And she said, I went for some healing and they just poo-pooed it. But whether they did or not, she was in remission. I never heard from her again, so I hope it stayed that way.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was incredible. Yeah.
That sounds like it was really moving, actually.
It was really moving. I had a little cry after she left because it was just, I was just so full of awe for the work that Spirit do for us. That they're so willing to come and do this work with us. It's like magic. It's not, but it feels like that to us, I think, when we're in physical. Yeah, it's a privilege to see that, to see them doing their work.
Normally, my last question is to ask you about what you would say to people who are cynical, or maybe were thinking about it but were worried or wasn't sure if they believed in it or anything like that. But I'm going to ask you a slightly different question.
Okay.
What would you think the management's answer to that question would be?
I think it's not my job to persuade anybody to do anything they don't want to do. So if somebody is cynical or denigrating about healing, then they don't understand and they can't feel. So I would leave them go on their way. Sometimes what I have done is just asked in my mind's eye, if you like. I've spoken to their soul and said, do you want me to send you some absent healing? And sometimes they say no, and sometimes they say yes. But I will send healing if they say yes. Because somewhere inside them they want to understand, and that healing might help them understand. If somebody is half and half and not sure about it, so it's a bit different for me, because most of my healing clients come to me for psychotherapy, and then I will offer the other things I do, and they can say yes or no. Most people say yes, actually, probably because they come to me and seen my website and seen that I work in a spiritual way, and they're drawn to that. So my clients tend to self-select, and I don't meet with that much skepticism these days, thank goodness. But if somebody's not too sure about it, then I will say, okay, we either won't do it, or you can try it once, and if you don't like it, we won't do it again. So no pressure, basically. It's not my job. I'm not evangelistical. It's not my job to persuade people. If they're not ready to understand this, then it's a lot to take in, and it can be really scary. So I leave them with that. You know, they might come back later because I left them with it now, rather than trying to persuade anybody now.
I think we'll end it on that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.